So let me just start by giving you a little bit of background about my experience in Washington, D.C. Jim characterized my appointment as the chancellor as being bold and unconventional. That was the nice way to put it. Other people, or most people in the city, just thought it was plain crazy. Because the situation was that in 2006, Adrian Fenty was elected the youngest ever mayor of Washington, D.C. He was the only candidate ever to win every single precinct of the city. And he came into the job and immediately on day one decided that his first action was going to be introducing legislation that would allow for a mayoral takeover of the schools. So for several months, the entire city was engaged in these conversations, and on June 12th of 2007, which was the first day that he officially took over the schools, he announced me as his choice for the city's first schools chancellor. Now, as Jim said, I was 37 years old at the time. I was not just 37 years old, but a 37-year-old Korean girl from Toledo, Ohio, who had never run a school, much less a school district. And literally, I think that the main thought on everybody's mind was, what is God's green earth was Adrian Fenty thinking? Right? Why would he think that this is the person who is going to be able to turn around the nation's most challenged school system? And to give you a sense of exactly why people thought that the district was as bad as it was, because it was often considered the most dysfunctional and the lowest performing school district in the country. Let me just give you a few statistics. The first is that if you were a ninth grader entering into high school in our system, the probability that you would graduate from college within 5 years of graduating from high school was 9%. We had an achievement gap between where our white students were performing and where our African American students were performing. That gap was a 70 percentage point gap. That's 70 percentage points. Of all of the 8th graders in the city's schools, only 8% of them were on grade level in mathematics. 8%, which means that 92% of our young people did not have the skills and knowledge necessary to be productive members of society. Essentially, children were almost better off staying home every day than coming into our schools where they were sure to be falling behind. We have gone soft. I see this with every fiber of my being and every interaction that I have. Right? We are so busy trying to make children feel good about themselves that we have lost sight of taking the time to build the skills in them so they actually are good at something, not just feeling good about something. This plays out with my children every single day. So I have 2 daughters, as I told you before, a 12-year-old and 9-year-old, and they play soccer, right? They suck at soccer because they take after their mother in their athletic skills. But you would never guess that from walking into one of these children's rooms, because in their rooms, they are adorned with trophies and medals and ribbons, right? You would think just by going into the room that I am raising the next Mia Hamm, when I am not, right? So I'm trying to tell my kids all the time, you know what? You're not so good at soccer, but what you got to do to improve and become great is you have to practice every single day. You got to, kick the ball into the net hundreds of times, and this is how you get good. So I'm like, you're not so good, but in order to get good, you have to work hard. But it's very hard for them to square with all the ribbons, right? Because they're getting one message here and they're getting another message here, but I thought it was good. This is part of the problem that I think we face as a nation. But what I am saying is that when we have created a culture that celebrates mediocrity, then what do we think the result is going to be? And this is playing out in very real ways in this country. Our country right now is at the bottom of international rankings in math, right? So if you look at our math scores, out of 37 developed nations, we're 31 or something like that, right? So it's pretty depressing. Reading, science, math, nowhere near the top. What we are at the top of, our kids, number one, self-confidence. So the same kids who scored 31st place on the math test, they scored first when asked the question, how good do you think you are at math? I believe, and this is my closing, that public education is supposed to be the great equalizer in our country. It's supposed to be the thing that ensures that it doesn't matter if you're black or white, rich or poor. We have a public school system so that every single child can have an equal shot in life, right? If you work hard, you do the right thing, you can live the American dream. That is not the reality that most children in inner cities have in our country today. The reality in Washington, D.C. is if you live in Georgetown versus if you live in Anacostia, you get two wildly different educational experiences. So think about it. We are still, in this day and age, allowing the color of a child's skin and the zip code that they live in to dictate their educational attainment levels and therefore their life chances and their life outcomes. It is the biggest social injustice imaginable, and it goes against everything that this country was founded on. Our ideals, our values are at risk today. So I just want to say that every single person in this room can play a part in changing this circumstance for children. Unless everybody, whether you have kids in the public schools or not, whether you even have school-aged children or not, everyone in this country needs to understand not only what is at stake for us as a nation in the long run, but living up to our ideals as a country, as a nation where every single child, regardless of where you live and who your parents are, you can live the American dream because you are getting an excellent education. And that's what we owe our kids. Thank you.